All right. We'll just give it a couple of minutes. I know there's still a lot of people joining. Hi, Mary. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It'll be great if you can actually put the country that you're joining from in the chat box. That way we'll know the audience a little better. Please feel free to type in your country, state. Awesome. Netherlands, US, Dubai, India, Kansas. Awesome. All right, I think we'll get started. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today at this webinar. My name is Rohit Kandari. I'm the Director for University Relations at KIC Universist. This has actually been one of the most anticipated webinars of the year for me, because you're getting going directly to the source, right? The counselors who sit across the students and families every single day. Universities are spending a lot of time and efforts and energies and money trying to understand international student markets. They're looking at enrollment trends, looking at numbers, yield rates, application volumes. And while all of that data is valuable, it's still retrospective, right? It tells us what has already happened at those institutions. What we are going to share today is going to be a little different than that. It's what counselors are seeing right now in their offices, in conversation with students and families who haven't even made their decisions yet. And that's a little different and probably a more valuable signal than just looking at the data. Uh, Today's webinar will have two parts. First, of course, I'll walk you through some of our findings from the Counselors Insight Survey that we do every year, what counselors around the world are seeing on the grounds right now. And then we'll hand it over to the panel. We have four counselors from four different regions, India, Brazil, Kazakhstan, and the UAE. And they will essentially add the real texture to what the data shows with these survey results. The whole idea here is very simple. The most reliable signal in international student recruitment isn't just enrollment data or trends. It is what counselors are observing before students are even making their decisions. And that's what we'll be sharing today through the webinar. Uh, before we get into the data, I just want to quickly, introduce the people who make this conversation worth having. I'm gonna pass it on to our panel of counselors. Over to you, Pasna. We'll do a quick round of intros, and then we'll get into the data.
Yeah, thank you, Rohit. Hello, everyone. I'm Upasna Kindra here, joining you from Delhi, India. And I work in a school which is an IB international school in Bangalore. And I have more than 20 years of experience working with students, parents, and families. And I hope we are going to learn a lot from each other today. And looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Pasna.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. It's 1 p.m. here in Brazil. I'm Nicola, originally from Yugoslavia, and I've worked in different schools in China, Qatar, and now I'm here. We are American school, the only international accredited school, an English-speaking school in the whole region of Rio Grande do Sul, or the south of Brazil. So I will share a bit of perspective of my school, but also of the southern Brazil region. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kaylin, and I am Canadian, originally from Toronto area, but I am coming to you from Almaty, Kazakhstan, where I'm finishing my first year at Kazakhstan International School. I'm a comprehensive counselor, and really excited to be here with all you wonderful folks tonight.
Good evening. I'm Arjumand. I'm based in Dubai, head of futures at King's Al Barsha School. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation tonight.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's very interesting, four different, completely different markets, four completely different student populations. And between them, they cover a lot of what we'll see in the data today as we walk through the presentation. I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible because I want to get to the main part of this webinar, which is the discussion with the panelists. So yeah, the survey itself, we conducted this in January. 211 respondents from high schools across 41 countries. A few things, worth noting about this is January is also mid-cycle, which means counselors, when they were responding to this survey, were fresh with live conversations in their heads. So this was not retrospective; it was real-time sentiments that was coming through the survey. Also note that some of the data that you see on the slides may look a little skewed, but that is also because most of the respondents are from the network of high schools that have that we've been constantly engaged with, and they have a higher international mobility, and some of the counselors that have actually responded have been a prominent voice in the international higher education space. So just know that they're telling you what they're actually seeing, and some of it can be very reliable as we walk through the data. So in terms of the counselor experience, it does matter. This one I know we put it up, but it does matter because this is how we're going to interpret everything that follows through here, right? 52% of counselors with 10 or more years of experience work at schools where almost 76% and above of their students go abroad. So we know that these are seasoned professionals at high mobility high schools, which means their observations will carry real weight to this presentation, to this survey. There's also a regional pattern that we saw, and Southeast Asia seems to have a little more mature counseling and infrastructure than Latin America. Please take that with a grain of salt. This is again just coming out of the data that we've seen. 67% of international school counselors have 10 plus year experience. These are counselors that have very clear filters for what works and what does not work for institutions that engage with their students and their high schools. In terms of student mobility, this slide will essentially tells us what percentage of their students are going abroad, and the regional variation here is different than each other. Southeast Asia and Africa are high mobility markets. 78% of Southeast Asian schools and 65% of African schools send more than 75% of their students abroad. Africa as a region often is underestimated from a mobility market. This data is definitely pushing back on that. South Asia and Latin America are a different picture altogether. Only 25 to 29% of schools in those regions send 75% of their students from their graduating class abroad. And that's a real opportunity or a missed opportunity for institutions there. And it definitely tells us that continuous engagements is important in those markets. From a curriculum split standpoint, it's also 67% of international schools send 50% abroad versus 46% of national curriculum schools. So the national curriculum number is substantial, and it's where a lot of future growth is going to come from. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. In terms of university visits, we asked them how many universities they receive each year, and there's definitely a pattern over here. Schools that receive more visits tend to send more students abroad. 60% of schools getting fewer than 50 visits a year have less than half of their class going abroad. So presence drives outcomes is what we're really getting to over here. And one of the message that we constantly keep telling universities is showing up matters at this point. And it's clear from at least the data results that we are seeing over here. International schools, they continue to be well served in terms of the number of visits. National curriculum schools, a, a little lesser than international, less than 30%. Universities are concentrating their outreach on schools that are already well covered in that case. And I think as institutions plan their strategies, uh, hitting those national curriculum schools is going to be equally important for institutions. Uh, from a regional standpoint, we've seen a lot more engagement in Southeast Asia and Latin America, receiving the most visits. Africa and Middle East, a little lesser. And of course, our panelists can confirm that or deny that. But we're seeing lesser engagements in these regions, despite showing strong mobility trends from some of the other parts of the survey for these regions. So the underserved schools aren't less interested. They're just less reached by these universities that are visiting these high schools. Um, from a visit standpoint, we asked them group visit versus individual visits or a mix of both. It was interesting that most of the counselors preferred group visits, but I think the majority of them basically said it depends on the execution. It depends on what do they bring to my visit. And it was just a very small number, 4%, that said we prefer individual visits. So I think for institutions also, what really do you bring? The value proposition from those visits is going to be important for these counselors. National curriculum schools have favored more group visits than international curriculum schools. And I think for the most part, international school counselors, they've had longer term individual relationship with university reps, and they've seen a lot more value with one-on-one or doing things differently than just hosting a group of institutions. Trends that we're seeing for the next 3 to 5 years. I think this is a pretty interesting slide. 46% of counselors expect a modest increase in students studying abroad over the next 3 to 5 years, and this has definitely been up from what it was last year, which was 35%. The market is growing, and the counselors are saying that they can feel it. Middle East is amongst the more optimistic regions so far. 63% expected a modest increase, and that's I always tell universities, when you're looking at Middle East, please look at it from an international outlook and not just recruiting local students over there. So if you're looking at truly international recruitment, that's a region that absolutely cannot be missed. Um, Southeast Asia is a more measured market. Only 22% expect a modest increase, and that's because that market is already mature. With some of the countries that have seen a very significant growth in the last decade or so. I think the growth for the growth opportunity is much smaller than some of the other countries, but it continues to grow at a modest pace. Um, I think the biggest opportunity that we saw from this data is 83% of national curriculum schools, they expect growth, versus just 52% from international curriculum schools. So the expansion is coming from national curriculum schools, and these are the same schools that we talked about earlier that are currently underserved by fewer university visits at these schools. In terms of some of the biggest barriers, um, I think the most important number on this slide, and which I will get to a little later with our counselor friends. 54% of counselors are citing that changing visa policies is a major barrier, right? And this has gone up from what it was last year, 33%. Um, that's a 21% jump in just one year. And something has materially shifted in how families are thinking about destination risk. The uncertainty around visa policies in the US, the immigration caps in Canada, the UK visa conditions. I think it is all kind of landed at the counselor's desk, and they're feeling it. They're really feeling it. Financial ability is still the number one overall barrier, and that hasn't changed. But there's a regional nuance that universities should pay close attention to. In South Asia, parental concern, the safety and risk is at 59%. It actually exceeds the financial concerns at 48%. So parents are more concerned about the safety than just the cost of the education. And I think particularly for institutions looking at South Asia, your messaging around campus safety or student communities will be more persuasive than just your scholarship offers that you talk about. For national curriculum schools specifically, we saw a lot of counselors saying that inaccurate information is a barrier. Students from national curriculum, they often arrive at counselors office with a partially made up mind. They're already thinking about something because that's based on some information that they've seen online or heard from friends or peers. And I think this misinformation problem is real, and that's shaping decisions before the counselor conversation for those students even starts with them. Um, in terms of study destinations, and I promise this is the final slide. I think we've seen a pretty diverse interest across major study destination. There were just a few findings that we wanted to highlight over here. Latin America in particular. Spain now actually outranks both UK and Canada for Latin America. So for all our Spanish institutions here, that's a region that you would want to look at, and that's a very meaningful shift. It's not just cultural familiarity or the language. I think it's also the tuition, which is a fraction of what U.S. institutions or UK institutions would cost. I think that's been one of the contributors for this shift. Um, Africa is the only region in the survey where UK and Canada rank above the US. So the US continues to be a preferred destination, but Canada and UK rank above the US for African students, and that tells us that there's something that is changing in those markets, and it's a real opportunity for UK and Canadian institutions to deepen their relationships here. Um, in terms of international curriculum schools, they consistently rate European destinations higher than the national curriculum destinations. So whether it's Italy, France, Germany, all of these are seeing a noticeable higher interest with international students, and I think that's just continuing to increase with these students. So that's a quick snapshot on the survey and what we're seeing on the grounds. Uh, but I'm gonna pass it on to the panel. I'm gonna open up for some more questions. Uh, and these are, as I said, four people from four different destinations. So you're getting the best out of four of all of the world over here. But like I said, I wanted to get to the first question for all our panelists. The visa policy as a barrier that we saw. And that's been the buzzword, at many of the conference that we've been attending. What is your take, and what are you seeing on the grounds with your students, with your families? What are they seeing about it? And please feel free to unmute yourself. Anybody, I don't want to direct it to any one person.
I'll jump in. So obviously in the UAE we have well over 100 nationalities in every school, and some people will have dual nationalities as well. So the political situations, as we know, they do affect the decisions that some families are having to make. But what I'm also seeing is if they do have a nationality, a passport that is a little bit easier to travel on, and they still want that particular destination, which their original passport may not be so easy to travel on. They are taking that decision. So I think it just depends on how important the destination is, and that particular university or universities. And they'll find a way actually of getting to that destination. But equally, obviously, we are seeing a lot of people really rethinking popular destinations. So obviously, I'll give the most obvious example would be the USA, and it's not just the visa, but I know you'll talk about this later on, but also people are concerned about safety. They are concerned about a wide range of other issues, and that's becoming much more part of the conversation.
Thank you, Arjuman. And just to add on to that, I was speaking with a counselor, and I think now families when they come to check about universities or colleges, the visa policy question is actually coming first before even talking about what destination or what university we should apply to. So I don't know if anybody is experiencing this. Feel free to share your thoughts. Yeah, sorry, Upasna.
Yeah. Yes, Rohit, absolutely what you're saying. This is something that, sometimes our conversation starts with the visa policy, and for some reason, they believe that we know better than them as far as the visa policies of the countries are concerned. So, it has kind of mutated from a back-end administrative hurdle into now a front-end psychological barrier that completely stalls the students' decision making. So, families are suffering from a very high cognitive load at this moment. When a country constantly changes its policies mid-cycle, families stop calculating the financial ROIs and they start calculating what are the emotional risks or what are the legal risks that are involved in, looking at that country that they had always been thinking about. Yes, like you said, US and even Canada, when there was a sudden cancellation of the SDS and tighter caps for the 2026, which meant for an IB student who had spent 3 years building, a profile or thinking that he'll be going to U Toronto or, something like that. But now suddenly knowing that it becomes very difficult for them to cope with such a situation. So in response, I believe Indian families, I would talk for most of them, they're creating multi-country safety nets now, applying to the UK, the Ireland, Germany, Spain, France, Italy. New destinations are coming up, and students, they can adapt to difficult rules. But what paralyzes them, I believe, is and them and their families are these institutional unpredictability more than anything else.
Yeah, we're also seeing the shift from the big fours to the big 14s, as they now like to call it. So yeah, definitely. Great. Thanks for those insights. And I know
I'll just
Arjun,
add in one.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead,
I'm
Nicola.
sorry. No, I'll just add in one sentence also that when we're talking about visa policy, we're not talking only about student visas that are the short-term objective of some of the parents, but a lot of parents I'm seeing are thinking long-term, and they're thinking about the opportunities of staying in the country afterwards, and then even if they're not at risk of being denied for a student visa necessarily, they're thinking about the work visa and the prospects once the students graduate.
Got it. Cool. I know, Arjuman, you touched base on this point, and Upasna also mentioned about this. Are students really self-selecting, away from certain destinations before they even seek guidance from y'all? Are they coming to your desk with already some preconceived notions about certain destinations and just not thinking in that direction?
Yes, some of it is actually guided by social media. So initially, a lot of the time, it is a case of my friend has told me this, or I've got a family member who's already at a certain university and they've had a certain experience, and it may well be it's a negative experience for that individual. Obviously, parents will have had, a relative amount of influence as well. But yeah, social media, because obviously they're watching all sorts of things. They're on the various social media sites on a regular basis, and then they're obviously getting bite-sized chunks. And sometimes, as we know, we can't control what's coming through on our phones. And so sometimes they may well have some information that is not completely factual. And it may also be, for example, the safety concern. If one incident has happened, then all of a sudden that's suddenly a full-blown, um, you know, for the want of a better word, a war zone, and it's not, regardless of which country we're looking at. So, sometimes I've had conversations and I've actually had to say, have you looked at reputable websites? Have you actually looked at this website and the university website? Have you actually spoken to people on the ground rather than just what's coming through on your phone that might have been, literally a 10-second TikTok or whatever it happened to be. And also, obviously, you do want to have a conversation with parents as well. So if there is some misinformation going on there, you actually do have a conversation with them as well.
Anybody would like to add on to that? Alrighty. Move
I
on to
can,
our yeah,
I mean,
go for
what
it.
she said, yes, I mean, I believe, social media is their ground of all the information. And, before they come, they are already through Reddit and they have already seen it. And sometimes they may not even talk about it and they've already made their, perceptions in their head. And it can be very detrimental if they are not talking about it to us. If they talk like Arjuman just said, that we can always, show them the right places where they can research and then probably take a call. But if they are just deciding based on what they've seen on a TikTok or an Insta reel or maybe just a Reddit post, then it is very difficult and they may not take the correct decision and their information may not be correct. So initially, I think, it was the university sending out the rejections. Now the students are sending out the rejections to the entire countries. So they just, like she said, just one incident and, this country is out. So that's something that is happening and I see it quite regularly.
Yeah, it's a lot of bad media and bad publicity that is driving a lot of these conversations, I believe, for students and families. And I remember, Swaraj, who's one of our co-founder, he had posted that every university needs to start doing one positive news every day on their social media, and really change the narrative right now, because it's just all the bad media and bad publicity that is doing rounds on all these social media handles. So yeah, we agree to that, and hopefully universities would start doing that. But how do you think the student priorities have changed in the last 1 or 2 years? In a sense that, um, we used to do our surveys with students, and we used to call it the one-third phenomena, where we did a survey with the counselor, with the student, and families. And families would always prioritize safety. Uh, for counselors, it would be the best fit. For students, it would be rankings. How are you seeing them, or how have you seen those change in the last 1 or 2 years, in terms of priority order?
I, I can jump in here. I think maybe one of the positive things of students starting to look beyond the core of places because of the precariousness in some parts of the world. Um, it's almost lifting the curtain on all these great schools in different parts of the world, right? And rankings are still way up there for students, and I think because that's something so easy to hold on to, right? And um, we're constantly saying, don't go with that one story. There's other information, but they are starting to ask more about what are the job opportunities? What, as you said before, like Nicola was saying, what can I do after? Can I stay in the country, and can I extend my visa? So I think there's more of an awareness getting savvy about the future in terms of next steps, and that's becoming more important to our students.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to add on to that?
Yeah, I'd also like to add on here, Rohit, what I see, because I've seen a massive shift, from previous years to now, and how they come talking to me in my office. Initially, it was only ambition, it was only prestige. Now, ambition hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. They're still ambitious. But more than prestige, I believe they've become, they become more pragmatic, I would say. So they're shifting from just a prestige validation to whether I will be safe there. They're looking at more, I would say the more human needs like mental health frameworks, economic stability, what is the local support that I'm going to get there, whether I'll get a job there or not. So, a conversation may sound like, Miss, do you think this university guarantees an on-house camp, on campus housing or not for the entire 4 years? What are the actual placement statistics for international students? Will we be kicked out of the country once we are done with our undergrad or not? So they're becoming more practical about their choices. Prestige is still there. I believe that's not changed much. They still want those high ranks, but again, it's become tougher for us also to answer a lot of questions sometimes.
Got it. Got it. And while we are on the topic of, preferences, I'm just gonna quickly launch a poll for our university friends, uh, to really understand what are their preferences as well, in terms of, and I'm just going to minimize this in terms of regions or countries that they're engaging in, just to get a fair sense of what are they thinking. But moving on to the next question, and this one is particularly, I know I mentioned I'm not going to pick on anybody, but I'm gonna actually pick on Nicola for this one. So Nicola, you mentioned that you come from the southern part of Brazil where it's probably underserved, I would assume right now, and please forgive my naiveness on this, but uh, what is that one message that you would come to the universities, not just as a school counselor for your school, but also from a region which probably is not being visited as much, as a Rio or a Sao Paulo or a Brasilia. Uh, how can universities effectively engage with schools in different regions, and how does that add more value to their strategies?
I can say that uh, first I'll answer the last question also, and talking about the shifts and what am I seeing. I'm seeing, and it happens especially here in this region. I'm seeing a lot of differences and variations in the student geographical preferences between the classes. Like the class of 2026 would have one idea, and class of 2027 would have a completely other, which is quite unusual. And a lot of people ask me, like, why is that? I think that, okay, there are many factors that influence students and parents' decision, but I think, including the geopolitical news and updates. But I think that one thing that I've and this is a message maybe for universities, is that I found like a power of the word very, very influential still. I think that, like, if one family or one student starts talking about certain university or certain country as a destination, many other students would follow that, and that's one thing that I'm seeing. And then that whole class kind of is influenced by like one or two or three students that are highly influential, and that's why like that class is completely different from another class, like class of 2027, for instance. That's one thing. And second thing that I would just say about the thing that you mentioned in this question about the geographical location of some of the schools, that's completely right. We don't see as many visits as some other schools in Brazil, because Brazil is a huge country and we are kind of like hour and a half by plane from Sao Paulo. But I would say to universities that sometimes less is more. I think that sometimes it's better to visit one school, and if the number of students that are going abroad is 90% or 95 or 100%. And it's maybe better sometimes to talk to less number of students and families, but like you see the interest, you can really deliver your message, or you can establish a connection or contact that would later be more fruitful than just presenting your university to masses of students.
Thanks, Nicola, for that perspective. And of course, we're definitely seeing universities being more interested in tier one and tier two cities, because a lot of mainstream cities or metro cities have been so saturated with visits. I'm hearing from schools of hosting 600, 700, 800 universities, and that's the saturation point for a lot of these schools and the universities, right? And I think you bring in a very valid point, which is, rather than doing three visits in a large metro city, focus your energies on one visit in a city which is underserved, and there you would have a more successful recruitment. Awesome. Thank you so much. Um, in terms and we touched this information a little bit, group visits versus individual visits, and some would say it depends on the execution. As counselors, and I'm sure all of you continue to host universities on campus. um, what really makes a group visit a successful one, in your opinion? Or what is that one thing that you would love to see, as universities continue to visit your schools, that would add more value?
I can just jump in and say, just speaking to the preference of group visits, I've really found, um, with my students, they're pulled in so many directions. They're so overscheduled. And oftentimes, when we have universities coming, they're coming during that 1/2 hour of the day where the kids have a breather, right? And so, um, I love having individual schools come in and visit, but they're not going to get as many students visiting, right? And oftentimes, if there's an individual school visiting and the students don't know the name, we talked about that status before, right? If they don't know the name, they're less likely to pop in. Whereas when you have a group, the exposure is huge, and students come back excited about talking to schools that they've never heard about, and they're just more likely to come and to meet schools and find out about places. So I find that really helpful when schools can come in a bigger group for us, and really, again, build that relationship piece where they're able to talk one-on-one, and also in small groups of students.
Anybody else? I know
Yeah.
Arjuman hosts a lot of universities. I've had the good fortune of visiting your schools on so many occasions. So
Yeah.
yes, anything from your end?
I think obviously for scheduling purposes, having a group is easier, because then we can put them into one venue, and I can make sure that that all the relevant year groups are aware. When it comes to making it a little bit unique in a group setting, what's always good is if for the again. It's nice if they do have a little gimmick. So if they do have a particular course that they want to highlight. So usually I try, when they get in, I usually try and make sure that I speak to them all before the students get to them, so I can find out if there is something unique that they really want to highlight, and sort of stand out. And then I'll be able to sort of actually tell the teachers that, oh, if you've got students who are interested in X, Y, and Z, send them to that university and so on. So try to sort of do a little bit of a triage, as such, so that everybody, because we don't want that. There's always, unfortunately, as we all know, there's always one university that might be just in the corner, and nobody really wants to go to them because they don't know them, or there's not much in terms of merchandise on the table or something like that. And so it's about, actually, for us from the school's point of view, to field those situations. But if they have got something in particular that they really want to highlight, then I can usually grab a few students and say, hey, look, go to so and so, because they've actually got this. So that's always a nice thing to do if it's a group. And obviously for ease, it's nice to have a group. But equally, what's even better is when, if it is an individual university, is if they've got a traveling academic with them as well. And it doesn't have to be a big name university necessarily. Obviously, we know that all helps. But if they have an academic who can actually either do a workshop around a particular subject, give a flavour of what that might feel like at university, or do a talk to students and parents, that makes it just that little bit more interesting and a bit different from the usual. Here's 20 universities, go and talk to them. So definitely, and now what I've been doing with quite a lot of university reps is actually building up that little bit of, what's your sort of package you can offer me. So I'll have those one-on-one conversations and say, when you're coming next time, if you'd like to come in on your own, but if you've got somebody with you to do X, Y, and Z, that would be amazing. And that just makes the difference. And obviously I'm tailoring it to exactly what my students are wanting. And then they're getting the exposure as well.
And Arjuman, we've been getting these universities across to so many schools. One of my messages to them is really to connect with the counselor after the school visit, right? Send in a small note, a thank you note, just saying that, hey, it was great. Um, and I personally, I'm not aware of how many actually end up doing this. Uh, would you all be okay with sharing anecdotal information? Of course, how many do that, but also how much do you appreciate those messages? Does that make you remember that person for a longer time than just coming in and out of your school?
So I'll actually just very quickly add on. So I was at a conference recently, and Nicola, you might remember we were at Portugal recently, and actually quite pretty much everybody, even the universities who I didn't get a chance to see, because we didn't have enough time, they've all followed up, and they've also, some of them have said, here's our brochure. Some of them have actually said we can do an online webinar for your parents and students. Here's a list of things that we can do. This is our availability. So that follow up 100% makes a huge difference. And what I've been doing is collating all that information, and then sort of I'll be able to go back to them to say, okay, yes, I would like this from you and something else from somebody else.
Got it. Awesome. And I see there's a question by Tatiana. What kind of materials do you all like to receive from universities in terms of information? A one-pager with all info related to application dates and grade requirements? What would work better on the day by day with so many universities? So what would ideally be your preference? Would you want to see like a workbook or a one-page flyer?
I think, if the information is concise, that will really help us and our students, because if it's too many pages, they might not even open it. So just one page is something I can even print and put it up there in my office. So that really works wonders. So if they're coming for some information on a university, even if they don't ask, they can just, walk around, and in one page, they're able to get all the information. That's what I feel.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. And let's save paper. Let's be sustainable, right? Let's try to be concise. But I think that's the message from y'all. And links included would be great. And I see Nicola already has a scheduled visit at his campus through one of the attendees. So that is great. I'm gonna launch one more poll for our university friends, and this is particularly pertaining to Middle East as a region, just given everything that is happening and just understanding what's it gonna look like in the fall. So I'm just gonna launch that. But if there's one thing that you would want universities to change about how they recruit internationally, how they engage with your students, what would that be? And this question would be relevant for all our panelists, because of course it kind of varies from region to region. So whoever wants to just go for it. What's that one thing that you would change how universities engage with your students?
I can jump in. I don't know if change is the word, but continue and increase the meaningful relationship building. And students feel that when you're able to connect with people or with students as people, um, and not just as a recruitment target, right? And we were talking about getting those emails from reps, and a few months ago I had someone write and say, here's some of my information, and if this student, naming the student, wants to get in touch, we had a good chat, and please tell him to be in touch with me. And that was just that, like, one little thing that made me go, okay, wow, this person, remembered my student's name, made a connection, that really simple thing. So real relationship building is what I love to see from reps coming in.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah, I
Kaylin.
completely agree with what she said, because the moment students sense that it's all transactional, they really don't want to take it seriously. And even if it's a good university and they can be a good fit for them, they just see it as a marketing gimmick and they would not want to listen. So I feel what she said, relationship building, and that comes from transparency. And I would urge universities to be transparent. Do not hide information that can be detrimental to them, because that can be one of the deciding factor later. So it's better to give away the information, whether it's right or wrong as per what you feel, but should be the correct information. Information should not be hidden from students. Once they come to know that this is something that the rep did not talk about, though he or she may have already known or maybe later discover, that breaks the trust. So I would believe more transparency there.
Awesome. Counseling-based approach to student recruitment, essentially. Awesome. Anything that Arjun, Nicola want to add? And I know we're at the closing mark, actually a minute 45 seconds beyond our scheduled time. So I want to just make sure I wrap it up.
I'm just going to second what everyone else has just said, actually, that that follow-up, if they've managed to get that name of the student, or even if they don't know the name, but they said, I spoke to a student who wanted X, Y, and Z, here's the follow-up information. That always helps. That makes a huge difference. And obviously and I know the reps are absolutely brilliant, is just making sure that they are available and handling the queries as they do. But if something that they're not sure about, what I really like is when they sort of come back to me and say, let me pass that on to the relevant department. And then they get the relevant department involved in, so that you get the most accurate, up-to-date answer as well.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. I think there's still a lot of questions, but I'm gonna just drop in our email address in the chat box. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll, of course, send an email out to everybody with the recording, with our contact information, so you could always reach out if you have more questions. Sorry we could not get to all of the questions that we had planned for. And I see that there's some question, what is a good group size, minimum, maximum? I don't know if y'all have a minimum, maximum number that y'all would want to share. Any minimums?
Yeah, I think anything between 10 to 20. I mean, obviously, it will vary on school venue size. So for my school, for example, I know that in the sixth form area, I can host up to 20-25 comfortably. So it will vary. I think it will vary very much on what school venue is looking like.
Perfect. Great.
And
Well,
maybe
thank you so
I can add one more point to her. I'm sorry, Rohit, because you know what happens when these group visits happen in my school. They stand in a row and they start, bullet point, the weather is like this is the ranking, these are the courses, blah, blah, blah. And, it is a script that all of them read out one after the other. So that is something that students lose interest in after a while. So I would suggest doing some kind of a collaborative workshop together, where the information is also shared, but again, it is not like a bullet point activity that students are not interested in, making it more meaningful, like initially one of the panelists did suggest. So yeah, groups is good though.
Thank you, Pasna, and thank you everybody for joining the panel today and sharing your wisdom about what you all feel and how your students are feeling about the current state of international education. For all our university friends who joined us today, thank you for taking the time to be here with us. If you have any further questions, of course, as I said, we'll share our contact details. Please do reach out to us individually. I know some of you have already connected with Nicola over chat. But we would be happy to continue this conversation. The students right now, they're forming all of these opinions about where in the world they want to study. They're doing it on their phones, they're doing it with their friends. But I think at the end of the day, the counselor, and on these panels are who they redirect all of these, conversations to. And I think, this is the place where where universities continue to invest and build those relationships that last a very long time. That one student that you enroll today, once it's on campus, they may even forget you, but that counselor will continue to know you. Even when they change schools, even when they change countries. So please continue building those relationships. Thank you once again to everybody who joined us. We'll be closing this webinar now. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you, Kaylin. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Upasna, and thank you, Arjuman. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.